The next award is in the category of History Education, and I'm going to ask Will Lee to come forward, describe the award, and make the presentation.
Good evening. I recently retired as a professor and taught a lot of poetry while I was teaching. Loved it. And occasionally I would teach a really horrible poem. So one in particular that I remember started with the line, "I love to love," said the darling child. So I want to start this presentation with a counterexample to the wonderful work that the Waldwick Community Alliance has done. And I'll take it from my own hometown. We've had a lot of historic preservation successes, but we've had a lot of historic preservation failures too. Take our railroad station, for instance. There were two extremely large Victorian wood elaborate railroad stations in downtown Englewood, and at their peak, 47 trains each day passed each way, commuting to New York. Now, those wooden stations are all gone. There was a restoration by, I believe it was the Northern Railroad, or not a restoration, but a replacement by the Northern Railroad, of a place that was in itself an historic railroad station and would have been worth preserving. But it was whittled away, piece by piece. And so now you have to take photographs of the gable to the north, which preserves some original detail. Almost all of it is gone. In Waldwick, the train station had fallen into disuse for decades and was deteriorating and eventually would have had to be demolished. It was a sad situation. A lot of people in town got upset about it, and so they started to work over 10 years ago to save it. Now, this required them to convince New Jersey Transit to lease the station to them, first of all, so that there would be a legal arrangement that would allow them to go forward. Then they had to restore it. That required undoing some things that should never have been done in the first place, doing some other things, using the original materials, and so forth. And here I want us to pat ourselves on the back as the Bergen County Historic Preservation Advisory Board, because we gave an initial large grant that got this restoration rolling, and then later offered support of other kinds as they moved forward. So they originally had the idea, and this was very far-seeing on their part, to make this a local history museum. And so after it got restored, they had to actually create display cases, museum exhibits, and so on. This is just a tremendous amount of work. And the results are plain. They have some permanent exhibits now. One of them is on the foundation of Waldwick, the founding of the town. Another one is honoring veterans, going all the way back to earlier wars and coming forward to Iraq and Afghanistan. And then another one called Local Train Lore that includes a display in the station master's house. I think actually most of that exhibit is in the station master's house. They have lanterns that were used by the brakemen, different kinds of tools that were used by the engineers, by the people who worked on the trains and so forth. It's a fascinating museum. You should go visit. Then they had different displays that were temporary exhibits, which were all also extremely ambitious. One called A Thread Through Time. I'm sure you all know about Patterson, and especially the silk mills, but also the cotton mills, the fabrics, so forth. Also trains and submarines, by the way. but there was weaving, cotton and silk that was also done in Waldwick by local companies. So this exhibit was on that. The immigrant experience focused on Italian immigrants. You probably know that different ethnicities have different specializations. Actually, Italian immigrants were one of the early groups to come into Englewood and use the Roman Catholic Church down the street from where I live. There was one on transportation, trains, planes, and automobiles also. So this is just fantastic, right? And the future is bright for them. They have a lot of people who are working on it. 5 of them are here tonight, but there are a lot more in the Community Alliance itself. Now, this is not the city government. This is not a local historical society. This is an alliance that was dedicated to this restoration and to the conversion and adaptive reuse of the building as a museum. So tonight I'd like the following 5 people to come up. Chuck Wanamaker, Randy Reveley, David and Lisa Bartold, and Richard Manella.
Thank you for your wonderful work. Really terrific. Appreciate that.
Thank you. You're a good team.
Thank you. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be in existence. And your initial grant to restore a building, and your special project tree. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next award is in the category of history publication,